Katie from Pumpkin Latte Lover, and my video today is about my top 5 reads of this past summer. I read quite a few books and I was pretty successful this summer getting through them all, so I figured instead of doing one huge wrap-up, I would talk to you today about what my top 5 favorites were. So the first book I'm going to talk about today, I did read it as an e-library book, so I don't have the physical copy here to show you, but it was Brooklyn by Tobin, I think is how you say his name. And basically it's set in the years just following World War II, and it's about a girl called Eilish, which I think that's how you pronounce the Irish pronunciation of her name, but if I'm wrong, obviously do correct me. I would like to know how to pronounce things properly. Even though I apologize in advance because I am often really bad at it. But anyways, it follows a girl named Eilish. Basically, she was living with her mom and her sister in Ireland, and her local priest convinced her to take the journey to Brooklyn, immigrate there for better opportunities there. He sets her up with, makes a connection with the priest that is local to that area, and she boards with a bunch of girls in a boarding house run by this one woman who's kind of a motherly figure, but not, but is very strict, so not quite a motherly figure, who's also connected to the church there. And it's just a simple story about a girl immigrating to America in those times and the struggles she goes through, the typical struggles she goes through, being a lady, making her mother proud back home, earning a living, trying to navigate her way in this new country, and becoming herself, becoming a woman, still holding on to the beliefs and morals that she had growing up as a young girl, but also finding herself and who she really is away from home and away from all of those things. And I am surprised at how much I really loved this book. I found it really sweet. I found it interesting. I didn't want to put it down, despite the fact that nothing really happened. And I say that in the best way possible, but really nothing happens. Like, it's not like there's this crazy mystery or crazy plot twist or, you know, like this roller coaster of emotions. It's really just her story. It's the story of this girl immigrating to America, and for some reason the writing is just so beautiful that you just want to know what happens to her. You want to see what develops, and you start to root for her, and you know, it's just really beautifully written, telling about how she sees the world and her feelings about it. And of course there's a little bit of you know, interest in men in there, there's interest in career in there, and I just really loved it overall. I have nothing bad to say about it, really. I think I gave it 4 out of 5 stars on Goodreads. And then the next book I'm going to talk about, book number 2, and these are in no particular order, but the second book is Road Trip Rwanda by Will Ferguson. You all know that I've talked about this. I think this is the 3rd time I'm talking about this on my channel. I love it. Love everything about it. I won't talk too much about it because obviously I've already spoken on the subject, but basically 2 friends go road tripping around Rwanda, as the title suggests. One of the friends is a Canadian writer, who is Will Ferguson, and the other friend was his neighbor, a fellow soccer dad, who had escaped the Rwandan genocide, and so they're going back and seeing through his friend's eyes things that he remembers, things that are bringing back memories, and then through the fresh eyes of Will, who's seeing what Rwanda is like today, what they're becoming, and reliving the tragedy through his eyes and what he sees as well. So it's beyond interesting. I love their take on the positives and the negatives of Rwanda. I think they do a really good job of bringing in the right amount of gravity to this past situation and the right amount of humor to what's going on with them in this road trip, to give you a little bit of a break in between all of the heavy subjects, and a really good job of showing what they're doing right in that country. It's not just about, you know, what they've done wrong, all of the tragedies that have occurred there, but also how they're recovering from that and how they're moving forward. I learned a lot while also having a laugh, so I recommend anybody to pick up this book if they want to learn a little bit more. Okay guys, so the next book that I want to talk about is All the Light We Cannot See by Anthony Doerr. I did read this book as an e-library book as well, so I don't have a physical copy. But basically, the book is set in World War II, and it follows a young girl named Marie-Laure, and she is blind, and she lives with her father, and they live in occupied France. And it's a really amazing story following them and what it's like to live in occupied France. They have to flee Paris, live with their eccentric uncle, and you follow the hardships that come with that. Now on the flip side is Werner, who is a young boy in Germany. He has a young sister to care for, and basically he's an extremely intelligent young boy. He knows how to rebuild radios and continues his expertise from there. And as we all know, in World War II, the radios were banned and confiscated. It was illegal to own one if you weren't part of the Nazi Party. And so they recruit Werner as part of their intelligence, and he hunts down radios by using their radio signal. And it follows his journey as he doesn't necessarily want to help the Nazis, but then how do you survive yourself in occupied Germany? You know, how do you survive? So then it's his own internal struggles and physical struggles, and then of course as the plot continues, then their lives become more and more entwined with each other, even though they're in different countries living different lives. And I don't want to say too much more because I don't want to give away the ending or what happens to these two individuals, but it's really interesting to see both sides of the coin, so to speak, and how they survived throughout the years of the war. So I do highly recommend it if you guys are interested. Ignore my low battery signal here on the graphic. Okay, so the next book that I want to talk about is Laughing All the Way to the Mosque by Zarka Nawaz. And I have to say that this book made me laugh out loud for real. I first heard about it by Simply Planning here on YouTube. She was talking about, I believe it was 5 books that you should read that feature Muslim women. And Zarka Nawaz is a Canadian, which piqued my interest right away, being Canadian myself. And she created the show Little Mosque on the Prairie. And so she is a writer by trade already. She writes, obviously, TV scripts and scripts in general. And it's basically her telling about her life. So it was really interesting for me to read about her life as a Muslim in Canada. And it is also really funny. She's a comedy writer. So I found myself laughing along throughout the whole book while at the same time learning a little bit more about the Muslim culture that I didn't know, and just learning about her life. And I just found it extremely interesting and a great way to learn a little bit more about a culture that, you know, I could always learn more about. And basically it was hilarious. So I think if you are in the mood for a good read, especially if you're Canadian, you know, like, you'll relate to a lot of the things she says about living in Canada, and pokes a little bit of fun at herself and about the city that she lives in, and I just found it really a really funny read. How many times can I tell you it's funny? I'll stop now. Okay, and the last book that I want to talk about is In Cold Blood by Truman Capote, and I had wanted to read this book for a really long time. I finally got around to it this summer, and basically it is about a murder of a family who lived on a farm in 1959, and what Truman Capote did is he went and he interviewed the 2 murderers, and he interviewed people in the town. He stayed in the town. I believe he researched it for a very, very long time, just living alongside the people who lived in this small town. I believe it was in Kansas, but I could be remembering that wrong. And again, I don't have a physical copy here to double check, but I just was really impressed by the amount of research that Truman Capote put into this book. He writes it as if it's fiction. So it's not written like a biography, or it's not just about telling the facts. It's told from the different perspectives of the people who were involved in this tragedy. So it's told from looking at the perspective of the murderers and what happened leading up to the murder, the night of the murder, after the murder, you know, how they ended up surviving afterwards and where they went and how they escaped police for a while. And then it's also told from the viewpoint of the neighbors and family and friends of the victims, and it also leads up with you know, a scenario of the family of the victims, and it's a really interesting way to write about something that has really happened in real life. And this was obviously a huge tragedy. It shook the town, the small town that these people were living in, especially in 1959, rural Kansas, in a small farm town. It obviously, you know, scared everybody that lived there, and it was a huge tragedy. So I think it's really interesting that he put so much research into it and then wrote it in such a way that you feel like you're following along a fictional story, and then you remind yourself, this really happened. These are real people. And so that makes it even more chilling to think that this is a true story. This is something that really happened in real life, and this is not made up. And it just was such an interesting way to read about it. Obviously, incredibly sad and tragic for the family that was victim to this incredible murder. And, you know, it's awful to think that it is a true story. I think that, you know, that's what makes it interesting as well, though, to have their stories told, to have people to remember them. You know, every time the story is read, you're remembering those victims and you're honoring them with that memory. And so hopefully the family is happy with what Truman Capote had put together, because obviously you would want them to be honored in their death as well. And I hope that the family didn't feel disrespected in any way when this was written. But it's just a massive undertaking that Truman Capote went through to write this book, and I think that it's definitely worth a read if you're interested in that sort of thing. And then for one final bonus, I know I said top 5 because those are the top 5 standalone books that I read that I was really impressed with this summer and were just what I needed at the time. But I thought I'd throw in one bonus. Diana Gabaldon's The Fiery Cross, which I believe is the 5th book in the Outlander series. I finished this, I think, August 30th, so it just snuck in there as the end of the summer read, and I was a little bit nervous about if I would continue to like the series or not. I heard a lot of people didn't really love number 5, so I was nervous to read it, but I am glad I picked it up. I flew through it. I was so interested in what was happening with the characters, continue to love the series, and I can't wait to get my hands on the next one, so I just wanted to give a little update about that. And thank you guys for watching this video. Give it a thumbs up if you liked it, subscribe if you want to see more, and keep your eye out because my next video will be a big giveaway video, so hopefully you guys are excited for that. Thanks for watching.